Well, we like random conversations, which is why we have Moritz here from Holochain to talk with us, right, Yuri?
We do. Moritz, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
So it is likewise for me. Good to be here.
Cool. So we're recording. We're live. Not live, but we can keep talking about what it's like, Yuri. As Yuri was saying, just before we started recording, sorry about that, Yuri. I should have given you that extra minute to talk about being on Broadway and never sleeping with the director, right?
That's right. Okay, so I say that anecdotally just because I haven't. When I worked on Broadway, it's not like I was given that option. So
wait, it's never an option. You have to earn your right to that being there, right? So,
no, I meant sleeping with the director, like working your way there and sleeping with whoever is around.
If they were gay or if they were men, I can understand why you might not want it to go down that path, but.
It depends how ambitious you are. I'm not here to judge.
Well, that's fair. I mean, if you want to move your way up in the world, I suppose you just do what you got to do, right, Moritz? Oh, he's giving us the finger.
No, he's giving us the 1 minute thing.
Sound was gone for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For a second.
We're still here chatting away, so don't worry.
Yeah.
So, Moritz, welcome. Nice to have you here from Holochain. I know you had some interesting things you wanted to tell us about, so.
Give me a second. Zoom is fucking me right now. 1 second.
Oh, sure.
Come on. All right.
You're shaking your head no.
No, he's got no sound. Sorry, I was trying to
Oh, I thought you were just telling me. Cut.
He's muted. Well, there was that too.
Yeah, well.
How about now? I'm back?
You're back.
Yes, you're back. You're
okay,
back.
Good.
You never went away. We saw you the whole time, like we're like spy camera guys over here.
Like a little start-stop thing, yeah.
Yeah, slightly.
Very good.
All right. But yeah, I'm here to try something different, I think. I remember seeing David Atkinson's conversation with you guys and really liking the flow of that, sort of more of a conversational tone, really sort of sharing a bit of the behind the scenes of some of the thinking that is happening in his head, at least. And the topic itself, I think, was fascinating as well, about the 10 rules or 10 questions to ask yourself when you're about to pull the trigger and build your own cryptocurrency and tokenomics and all that stuff. And so what I've been working on with David, both in my own time as well as the one that we share, is basically he realized in those conversations that he has with all these people that he talks to in partnership conversations, in project collaboration conversations, all those kind of things, that there's not really a good framework for people who are not from crypto, who don't have a good understanding of crypto, to make those decisions that they need to make in order to set their business onto the right path for the future, and not just for the next year for the fundraising, but for the years to come when the thing actually becomes a real business and the community gathers around it and users actually adopt it. And so out of those conversations, he started to realize, for example, something that people don't understand is that there is a difference between a protocol, a platform, and a framework. And these are not the same thing. And you might not want
a pilot and a proof of concept.
Yeah, sure. Or even what a white paper even means at this point.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, even white papers are confusing because we should actually have yellow papers, which are business papers, and white papers, which are actually technical. And everyone's jumbled the whole thing up. And now I've seen black papers and I've seen blue ones.
We have a green paper.
I'm waiting for the unicorn paper because that would just make my kids so happy,
Now we're bringing out some light papers at some point. So
okay, light. Well, that's okay.
Light papers.
Well, hey, this is Steve Good on the Coin Chat with Yuri Cataldo and Moritz Bierling from Holochain. Great to have you, Moritz. We're always here to have some fun. So welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Starting it right
so
off.
tell us, do you wanted to talk about protocols versus platforms, or was there something else? Because I know you sent me a URL before the show, and I was expecting some really exciting thing, and all you got was like 5 text messages on a URL, and it was like, I don't know what to say. I don't even know what this is.
I don't even remember what I sent you.
I'm going to find it, and I'll put it up on the show so people can see what it is, because I thought it was so hilarious.
Yeah.
Sure. But, although, wait. So, sorry, Moritz, but while Steve is searching for that, could you tell us about yourself?
Oh, of course. Yes. So I'm a 26-year-old German. Sometimes I like to call myself a hamburger, which is true, because I'm from Hamburg, Germany. Mm-hmm. But I have been working with Holo and Holochain for the past year or so. I had actually been following the project that it came out of Scepter and the project that came out of MetaCurrency for about 5 years. And so I was aware of them for quite some time. And when I saw their sort of volunteerish, research-ish efforts starting to become something that looked more like a business or like an actual technology that you could use, I realized, whoa, like the philosophy stuff that they've been building out and the technology stuff that they've been researching is some next level shit, and I want to be involved. And so I started talking about it on Facebook, on Twitter. I started creating videos on YouTube, and had lots of conversations, drew people in who were smart and who were like wondering, what is this about? Yeah. And so over time, it became pretty clear to them that I was somebody who was not just sort of a random passerby, but somebody who was interested in bringing this to people and to not only take it in, but actually develop it further. And
Moritz, I just want to say one thing. You are somebody, okay?
Thank you. This makes me so happy.
I feel so warm and special with you now.
I was so doubtful that I actually was somebody that.
Well, you're somebody that sends me this kind of thing, right? It says, "Welcome to the Holo example node at 172.22.204.2202." And I thought, wow, that's so cool. What does that mean? It says, if you have reached here, then the following things have successfully occurred. And I said, I didn't do any of these things.
Right.
You win.
Yeah, I got the requested domain name. It's been forwarded, and I got this requested domain name that's been retrieved. And I'm thinking with an HApp identifier, and I'm thinking now I really have no idea what's going on here. And then the HApp identifier has been used to retrieve a tranche of nodes. And I'm thinking, are we speaking in French or in German now? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Those things happen there, but they happen not because you did something other than like going to the URL. Like it's just something that happens automatically. And I sent you that because it is something more than just me talking about Holo. It is something where you can see that something has happened that allowed you to see that page. That is not just us talking about Holo existing and being maybe something in the future, but actually what you're seeing there is, okay, you went to a URL that resolved into something. You can see this text there. And so all these things have happened. You don't have to have the technical understanding to understand what that means exactly, but it tells you that, oh, these guys have figured out Holo to some minimum viable product in a sense, and it can actually host something from a distributed app, a Holochain app that is not in the client-server model, and bridge that to you through the browser, through the URL.
So a distributed app is effectively feeding like up onto a web page now.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really cool. That's very
why
cool.
I sent you that.
Wow. Okay. Well, I didn't. Yeah. I was too thick to understand. I apologize for that. Yeah.
Well, we're still at the point where all of the things that we're doing require tons and tons of explanation, and so I don't fault you for that.
Sure.
Well, I had 6 checkmark bullet points, and I got past bullet point 1 and said, Yuri, I don't know. He said he was going to send me a demo, and the demo consists of 6 bullet points with the congratulations at the end. I was so excited about the congratulations part. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah. But yeah, like perhaps I give some more context for the people that are listening and wondering what we're talking about. Because I mean, Holochain and Holo, some of you have probably watched the ones with David Atkinson, our commercial director at Holo. But for those who haven't, Holo and Holochain are 2 sort of sister companies, or rather, companies and sort of communities as well. And so the one that came about first was Holochain, which is basically a pre and post blockchain technology, which sounds weird. It's not a quantum thing, but it basically was designed in principle in very basic design before Bitcoin was even released to the public, but it was never actually implemented until about 2 or 2.5 years ago.
Right.
And so when they then started to make this something that isn't only a research effort, but actually something that is getting effort behind it, people are putting in energy and money and their trust, it became something that is now already 2 years in existence, and you can already build apps. We call them Holochain apps, sort of our little cutesy term for distributed apps on Holochain. And then we realized, wow, this thing is so next level that people still don't really get it, and they don't know how to interact with it, and they don't know what to do with it. And so we realized, okay, if we are serious about reaching it, like the mainstream, the masses with distributed apps, which I think everybody in the crypto space should be serious about and should wonder about what it takes to get there, then we not only have to build the technology, we also have to build a bridge that people can walk across from where they are to where they need to go by going through Holo. And so we created this company called Holo, which is a cloud hosting market, basically similar to Amazon Web Services, which is where every app that you have on your phone, nearly every app on your phone uses Amazon Web Services. Basically, all of your apps run on their servers, and it is through them that you are able to access all your like different little communities, different functionalities, etc. And so we're doing the same thing that Amazon Web Services does, but with crypto, and allowing you to enter into a distributed app without realizing that you're even using crypto. And it is this kind of thing where people who are using crypto apps don't even realize that they're using crypto, where we need to get to so that we can get to the masses and not pitch to people, hey, buy my token, this token is the best, and like do this propaganda war, but instead just provide functionality, use, and value, and then have people join something because the app gives them something they need rather than sort of being ideologically bought in.
Right.
So one thing that comes to my mind immediately when you talk about this decentralized version of an app or a HAP is the performance that might be degrading because we don't know who's serving up that HAP to us and what level of capacity their box has and how much can you throttle it or how much has it been tuned. And I'm sort of giving away the fact that I worked in software testing for many years in the fintech world. So I'm very conscious of how important it is to be able to, to deal with large scale volume. And if it's a single user test, that's one thing. But if you suddenly have 1,000 people or 10,000 people hit that same HAP at the same time, what happens then?
Well, this is the place where I sort of have to explain a bit how Holochain works to distinguish it from how you're used to thinking about blockchain, because that carries all kinds of assumptions with it that are not really properly applied to our technology.
Okay.
And so I'll do the very simple version of how Holochain.
You see that, Yuri? We get the simple version. You see what that says about us?
I appreciate
you
the
can
simple
ask
version.
me to go into more detail if you want, but I doubt it.
No, Yuri appreciates the simple version.
I appreciate simple version.
Cool.
And I appreciate Yuri.
Fair enough. I'll do my
job. Go for it. We're just having a bit of fun.
Then maybe you're happy too.
No. Actually, it's good. Keep it simple because I think everyone appreciates. Start simple, and then we can get into more depth as we need to. So awesome. So go for it. Yeah, tell us.
So basically, when you come from blockchain, you have a certain set of assumptions. You think that a blockchain needs to have a consensus algorithm. You need to have people all have the data basically available if they're full nodes. You expect them to have some kind of proof of whatever, be it works or stake or whatever, not the steak that you eat, hopefully. And that doesn't really apply to us because our technology is not a sort of linear extrapolation or marginal improvement to blockchain, sort of going from Bitcoin forward. But instead what we did, we rolled back to sort of before the Bitcoin point, the Bitcoin singularity, if you will, and figured out, oh, we actually need to do something else in order to solve this problem. And in order for me to explain why Holochain is different, I need to explain what Bitcoin actually did, and then how we're doing some of those same things, but in a very different way. So for the people who are watching, this might be a different story that you've never heard about Bitcoin before. So listen very closely. So Bitcoin solved the problem of what I call distributed intrinsic data integrity. As in, how do you have a bunch of data live out in the open among many different computers without any one of those computers being able to fuck with it after the fact, right? So that's what Bitcoin does. But it did this not by really doing a massive innovation in computer science, because actually similar types of algorithms and technologies like blockchain's proof of work consensus, as well as the hash chain sort of chaining of blocks to each other, or other entries to each other, was already around for quite some time. GitHub uses the hash chain approach, blockchains that sort of took that and then batched updates to it. All of those were already around. But the thing that was the genius about Bitcoin was that it found an economic or a game theoretical solution to assuring that integrity.
Right.
And so it found a way to make it economically prohibitive or expensive enough that an attack would be too costly for an attacker to execute. And so it achieved this consensus and this integrity of data by requiring everybody to update the chain, or like on their own devices, as new blocks get added. And so to have the most up-to-date version available in order for them to participate. And so this is the genius of Bitcoin. And this is also why it has commanded such a strong following, and why there is such a term as Bitcoin maximalists, because it was sort of the singularity point of, whoa, we couldn't do this before, now we can, what the fuck, like what do we do with this now? And like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so at the beginning of Bitcoin, actually, what people don't often forget now is Bitcoin had a real political project. Like, it was not just some technology that some nerds were playing around with for fun, but it was actually designed to be the sort of the spear in the heart of the legacy financial system, and to deprive states of the capacity to basically inflate the money supply and tax us through another means.
Well, so it's interesting you say that, because, you know, there are countries that have already switched over to other currencies. So if you look back at, let's say, the US dollar as an example, Panama was the first country to adopt the USD years ago, and other countries like Ecuador have followed suit. So they have there's sort of a duality here, right? One is, it's sometimes easier not to try to dictate your own monetary policy with your own currency, because it really requires a lot of effort, and that's what a lot of ICOs are trying to do. And on the other hand, you're relegating control of your own currency by adopting someone else's currency, but you follow the rules that that currency defines, or that other country defines to some extent or degree. So in some respects, we could argue that Dash has kind of been adopted by Venezuela now to a large degree as a currency, although it's not official, but it's very widely used. And we've seen other countries like Belarus that have said, we're not going to tax anybody for 5 years, and countries like Japan that are widely accepting Bitcoin. It won't be long before some of the countries that are, let's say, less economically stable switch to Bitcoin and end up becoming very wealthy just because they switch their economy to Bitcoin during a bottom. I mean, if a country like the Gambia were to switch over to Bitcoin and dump their local currency, can you imagine what wealth they might create just by switching everything over? It'd be insane. So I don't think we're that far away from it happening. I think it's just a matter of time before we're going to see that next transition over in terms of adoption, the same way that people have adopted other currencies into their own country.
I think it's very possible, yes. I mean, I just saw this article yesterday or today about this city that is intended to basically only accept Bitcoin and be this massive tourist attraction of 3 million people a year, basically, yeah, being a Bitcoin city. So we're already
city with this?
I think it's in Malaysia somewhere. I don't quite.
In Malacca. It's an 835 acre island, but it's not actually Bitcoin. It's going to accept only their own currency.
Okay, interesting. Maybe it's very different articles, but there's definitely something in the air that people who are planning projects of that scale, that actual massive scale, are deciding to go with a different technology than sort of fiat. So that's quite something for sure.
Yeah, they're creating their entire the entire island that they're building around is going to be all crypto driven.
Yeah.
So we can do a fact check on that. I'm pretty sure that they said they would actually use their own currency, but they may well accept Bitcoin at the beginning. But I think the plan was just to only accept their own at the end. But yeah, either way, the point is quite clear. It's they're experimenting now with a lot of land.
Right. And I think we also have to give a bit of nuance. Like lots of these kind of projects, not necessarily this one, but lots of these projects use this to generate attention. That's just the world we live in. So you always have to do your own research, but it definitely says something about that this kind of thing is generating attention because people are realizing, okay, this is something that gets people's heads into the game and like their hearts even. And if we do this, if we announce this, we will get massive attention. We will get lots of support. So it's quite something. Like Bitcoin is really not just or not even primarily a technological innovation, but it's also like a very strange sort of memeplex, if you will, like a whole thing that anchors in people's minds, like infects them and then turns them into sort of these people that are then going out and infecting more minds. Like this is not something that's exclusive to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is really good at this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wait, so Steve, I fact checked it and you are correct. They will make you, it's not a Bitcoin city or crypto city, but you have to, when you get there, you have to change what they're calling normal money into the local DMI coin to pay for anything.
Wow.
And this article came out yesterday or no, last week.
Yeah, it was out last week, about 6 or 7 days ago. Yeah.
Yes, they're calling it the world's first Bitcoin city, Bitcoin in quotes, even though technically you have to, cash is banned, but you have to go into their own currency.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Amazing. Yeah. But so like we get a good sense now where Bitcoin is at its 10-year anniversary, which is where we are right now. But to really understand how it got here, you have to understand how magnificent of an idea it really was to create this sort of workaround solution to this very hard computer science problem of DIDI, or distributed intrinsic data integrity, which is, by the way, a mouthful, but I'll try not to use it. But so now that you understand sort of what Bitcoin did, now I can explain to you why Holochain also solves that problem, but does it differently. And so if you think sort of back to before Bitcoin, Holochain also figured out that distributed intrinsic data integrity, how do we have this bunch of data live out on many different servers with nobody being able to tamper with it after the fact? It figured out that in order to solve that, you need to, and to approach it not just from an economic perspective, you need to have computer science innovation. And so in the sense that I started thinking about this, I believe that Holochain solved this problem from the actual computer science dimension in a sense. And so the way we did this, or the way that they did this, I wasn't part of the team back then, was to basically combine very proven existing technologies into a magical mashup in a sense. And so the technologies that we combined were hash chains, which everybody in blockchain should know, which is basically the same thing as blockchain, except that blockchain batches updates rather than committing every single entry to the chain.
Right.
And then, which is also a technology that GitHub uses and Git to keep track of code changes. So it is a proven technology and has existed for decades. And so you can pretty much rely on this working. And this is something else that you need to keep in mind whenever you evaluate the technology is, if it's experimental, like, yes, let them prove that it works. But if they use something that has already been around for a while, you can probably trust it much more than this other sort of experimental stuff.
Right.
And so the other part of the game is distributed hash tables, DHTs. And these have also been around for quite some time. If you've ever downloaded, perhaps illegally, an album or a movie or whatever other digital file that you can copy and consume, then you have probably used a distributed hash table. And what you do when you go to Pirate Bay or whatever other platform that you use to find your magnet links, you go there, you search for the file that you want, the file name, you find a magnet link, which is like a mini file, basically just a pointer. And then with that pointer, you can open it in your torrent app. And then with that app, what that does, it takes that pointer and it looks up other computers in a network that also have this DHT sort of thing that's going on, and finds whoever else has that same file on their device, and then allows you to create a direct connection between your computer and their computers, and then to stream their file to you in mini bytes, pieces to your device in a very quick fashion. And that's the way that you receive the file, and then it sort of assembles it on your device. And that's how distributed hash tables work. And basically what distributed hash tables do, so to just explain it a bit more, they're basically a universal file system that doesn't rely on any particular computer being online. Because what it was designed to do was to create a distributed net that cannot be like cut at the root or cut at the center, which is what all the states do when they find something that's illegal or not to their liking. They go to the root, they cut the root, and then everything else dies. And so the point of DHTs was to create a folder structure, a file system, just like on your desktop with files, but that isn't dependent on the computer that it lives on.
Right.
And then to have you be able to find other people and then like stream it, and then like you can stream it to other people. And then if one gets taken down, everybody else can still do what they're doing. And so now it's just a fact of life that you can do this. And this is also why, of course, all kinds of criminal organizations use this for sharing all kinds of other data, or also like, I don't know, other illicit material, porn, whatever it may be. But also, of course, books, for example. So I actually like to search for book torrents and then download books that I would otherwise be unable to get or have to pay lots of money for. So
right.
This is,
but we didn't say that. But we didn't say that on the show, though.
Well,
we didn't say that, right?
Yes, you guys did. But I've actually been found out by the German legal system and had to pay twice something for my acts. So, but yeah. Anyways, now I'm much more careful.
Right. Rather than dissuade you, you've just kind of upped your efforts.
Right.
That's right.
VPN.
He's going to be anonymous on the next episode, Yuri. He's going to have like a with a hoodie.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be called more Satoshi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, so those two technologies are sort of the main core pieces of Holochain, and I'll tell you how they connect to in a second. And then we add some more magic, basically. Well, we add validation rules, which basically means if you do something in an app, it checks whether what you're doing conforms to the rules of the application. And then we also add app code, which basically just specifies what the app can do and how it's structured and all that typical sort of database management stuff. And so once you then download a HAP, which could be a DMG if you're on Mac or whatever other executable or whatever, and you install it on your device, what happens is the following. The HAP gets installed, and as the very first act that it does, that is even independent of you doing something, is it takes the app code, the entire app code, and hashes that app code to the Genesis entry of a local hash chain that is just your hash chain.
Just on your PC, you're creating your own blockchain on your own laptop and generating a Genesis block right there the minute you've installed it. So
and
every time someone installs that app, you've got multiple PCs installing multiple versions of the same app, but creating an independent blockchain with an independent Genesis block on that chain.
Yes, I'll be precise and say hash chain, but yes, blockchain is fine. And so, so this is, but notice what I said, hash the app code as the Genesis entry. And this is really important because it means you've basically now specified the rule set by which you're operating in this Holochain app. And then what happens when you then do anything in the app, every single entry in your hash chain gets checked against the rules. And if the rules say, no, you can't do this, then it doesn't even like propagate on your own device. It can't even get added to your own hash chain.
Right.
Of course, if you're a hacker, like you can try to fudge with that, but there are different ways that we solve for that, and I can go into that in a second. So once you've created a Genesis entry, then you can take actions within the app. Usually, if it's the first time that you've installed the Holochain app, it'll ask you to like create an identity and a key pair and all those kind of things, right? And then let's actually take a concrete example of what kind of app this could be. What would you guys like to use?
A Monopoly game.
A Monopoly game. Okay.
I was gonna say gambling, but that works too.
I was gonna go for Slack, but this is fine. Yeah, this is good. So, okay, let's take a Holochain Monopoly, a Holopoly. I just came up with that.
There you go, a Holopoly. Yeah, nice. We won't get it. We're not going to get it into kind of copyright or patent issues here, are we?
Nope.
So let's say you make you want to start a game. And you publish some, like you want to basically invite other people, or maybe you start with a game first on your own chain. If it's just yourself playing against the computer, if you will, this might actually be difficult because Holochain is much more like a rule set that different agents or actors or people can use to interact with each other than it is sort of a run, like a run code that just goes once you do something, it just goes on and like it does the things that are specified. So I mean, there is some of that, but yeah, it's not exactly like a smart contract. And this is something that people often confuse when they first work with us. But yeah, so let's take the Holopoly example. Let's say you make your first move in the app and you've already found your collaborators. So you first enter your move on your own hash chain, and then that entry gets shared to your co-players, the people that you're playing with, through either, like in this case, it could actually be just gossiping, which is just direct node-to-node messaging. But because you probably want to keep this entry up for posterity to see, or for people to check whether like you're a good player over time, all these kind of things, you might want to have it socially available, and to also have other people be able to check whether you did everything right and whether like you're actually a good player by them going through your history. And so what you'll do is the entry that you've put on your chain, maybe you should actually add what a hash actually is for the people who are following along. People don't really get that often. A hash is basically just a digital fingerprint of a file or of some kind of file. So whenever you take a file and you run it through some algorithm, it can produce a hash, a digital fingerprint. And this is what the hash chain stores, which is basically a pointer to the file.
Okay.
And that's the way that it stays lightweight as well, which is really important because we want to have these apps be as lightweight as possible and not require so much storage and computing and that kind of stuff.
We need like the diagram for dummies.
Right, I need a visual.
We need a visual for this.
Yeah,
that might be something that you could come back with, is just something like a really simple diagram that shows a flow, but in like without the words hash.
Yeah. I can do that actually.
Yeah, it might be fun to do that, but not of course not now because we don't have much time left. But it would be fun to kind of get into it a little bit more because I think it's a really interesting topic. And you know, Yuri and I don't tend to go too technically deep, but you're certainly glossing the surface, and you're probably still losing Yuri. Dare I say?
I'll accelerate.
Probably losing me a little bit too, but it's not a bad thing because actually, it just goes to get. I mean, here's the thing. We want our listeners and our viewers to appreciate how technically complex cryptocurrency blockchain is underlying the whole thing, the infrastructure. But I wouldn't say that's any different from when we started the internet or when we went through Linux environments or other things. This is just the next generation and the next generation of code moving along. And we're getting into all these types of things about hashing an app rather than hashing a transaction. We're just talking about the next generation on the next generation of where this goes. The average user, to be fair, and this is probably right, you tell me if I'm wrong, Moritz, but the average user probably will never care about this.
No, and they don't need to. This is the great thing. They don't need to care. It's only for the people who are maybe builders, and this is why I explain it, and maybe we shouldn't go too deep into this. You're right. It's just that I'm so used to talking to builders rather than consumers that I'm always going to like the stuff that gets me excited and that gets them excited. But anyways, so
but I think the important thing is there's a lot of enthusiasm both with what you're doing, but also I think generally the enthusiasm about what we're all doing in cryptocurrency, which is revolutionizing technology, because we've been static for a long time. I mean, we've had some level of innovation taking place, of course, and we've seen, code development like C# and .NET evolved massively, and Java has developed massively, and then we've had Python, and they're all development languages that have expanded and made things so much easier with, code on top of code on top of code that makes libraries on top of libraries that makes it so easy and so code-wise, things have gotten so much easier. But of course, you get to a point where you say, right, we need to get to a next level of innovation, and that's what I think blockchain brings. And with that, it's a whole different kind of mindset that blows people away, because it's like Yuri and I joke about. This is the time for cryptographers. They never really had much of a chance, except for maybe during World War II. But this is really like the era of the cryptographer.
The era of the nerds, yeah. But, maybe I'll just, since we don't have much time left, let me just sort of give something, a little bit of a piece that normal people can grasp and can follow easily, I think. So I think what you're talking about is basically the evolution of the web, right? Like you're talking about where we're going towards with all this stuff that we're doing with these apps and these computers and these servers, etc. Now, but I want to sort of help people understand why Holochain is something different and how to put it into the context of the web development actually over time. So at the beginning of the web, when Tim Berners-Lee, the genius that he was, outlined the vision for the web, he specifically talked about peer-to-peer, that you should be able to interact directly with me. And he talked about servers directly communicating. Everybody has their own server, their little data store, and then you communicate through email or whatever other protocols, right? And that was the vision. But what happened was that servers are too difficult, too expensive, too costly, too annoying, too frustrating to operate for the end user. It's just not worth it. Why should I need to learn to code to be part of the internet if the internet is easy to use?
Yeah.
And so what happened was, because it was so far too easy and not the default to have your data live on your own device, we got away from that. And so the corporations that developed the internet further, and pretty much we have to thank porn for that, they figured out, okay, what we do is we put all the data in one place, these massive server farms, and then what you do is you come to us and you do your little thing in our server farms, and then when you're done, you go out again. But everything happens on our turf, right? And so you have this shift of peer-to-peer, the most intelligent, the most capable people communicating through the internet over research and science and all that stuff, to consumer adoption. And because it was so hard to use on the like really basic level, normal people just started using the services that were offered to them by other people. And so Holochain presents a step sort of back to that original peer-to-peer vision of the web, because it makes you owning your data the default. Okay. You don't actually have to tick a checkbox or learn to code. It just is that way.
Right. It's fascinating, isn't it? This is really evolving, and this is really cool to see. I mean, I think what'll be really interesting, other than a visual explanation of this, would be an actual example of an app that's doing some of this stuff, so we can start to see examples of this. And of course, no pressure, because we don't know when you'll have that, but of course.
Look, there are 60 apps out there that are functional to some degree, so it's not a problem of showing apps. It's just, what we're not yet at is production readiness, like where we can guarantee security and where we can guarantee that it'll be as fast as we think it is.
Right. Well, this is exciting. Well, Moritz, thank you very much for bringing this technical depth to the show. It's kind of like, let's see how much we can confuse Steve and Yuri in 20 minutes or less. Objective achieved.
I'll be sure to make up for it next time.
No, it's okay.
No, go ahead. I plan on going back and watching this again, because there's so much knowledge that you dropped in a short period of time. But I have to just but this is great. I learned a lot.
Yeah. I think the key to this is there's a lot of things to learn, and as much as we've done to try to help educate people within our own show, and for those of you listening and watching, of course, we encourage you to keep doing research and keep learning, because there's just layers and layers and layers of more to know in crypto, which is what's exciting. And at the same time, you don't need to get into that much detail, so don't worry.
Right.
There's plenty of things that run and operate like your operating system on your PC or your Mac, and Windows and Word and other things that all have tons of code behind it, and you don't have to see it. So if you're not interested,
I have no clue how a plane is flying, actually.
What's that?
I have no clue how a plane flies, and yet I still travel.
Yeah, exactly right. So we don't have to know how it works to use it, but it's still interesting to know more about what's happening. And this has been really, really interesting. So thank you, Moritz. This is Moritz Bierling from Holochain. Right. And of course, Yuri Cataldo and I from where are we from? The Coin Chat. I forgot where I am.
We're from this place.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening, watching, subscribing. Don't forget to ring that little bell on your way out if you're on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple, or just say, I'd like to listen to the Coin Chat on Amazon Alexa. We're there too. To the moon. Until next time.